Thank you all, by the way, for participating. I'm investigating three main concepts and trying to see how they're related together. The first one is this idea of connectedness to nature, which I'll just label as CTN. And that's the idea that as human beings, we have this natural sort of affiliation, connection with the natural world that builds into who we are as human beings. We're attracted to nature, plants, animals, geography, all of that. But there's different degrees of connectedness. Some people feel closer, and some people feel farther away. So what I'm trying to look at is what are some of the effects that are associated with that sort of connectedness to nature. And I'm looking at two main concepts. I'm looking at the idea of mental health, and I'm looking at the idea of quality of life. Okay? And specifically, I'm trying to see what's the relationship between being connected to nature, feeling connected to nature, and mental health, and what's the relationship between connectedness to nature and quality of life. So as you can probably tell from the surveys, there are some surveys which ask you questions about how you feel about nature. There's some surveys that ask you questions about sort of mental health and those symptoms that people experience throughout the course of their lives. And there's questions about quality of life overall and how you think that your life is going in general. So my survey was designed to tap into all three of those areas. So kind of my research question was, how are these things related? Are they related at all? And then sort of the literature, when I searched the literature, said that no one had really looked at this before. And no one had really looked at this before. This link between mental health and quality of life, people have done that one. We know that this is positive, whereas one goes up, the other goes up. But no one's really looked at these two connections, so that's kind of why I decided to do this research. And so this is a survey study, so that means because it's a survey, we can only tell correlations, we cannot tell causations, okay? So that means that I'm not going to be able to answer the question if we increase connectedness to nature, that'll cause an increase in mental health. It'll only be able to say that they're kind of associated, that as one goes up, the other goes up. Or as one goes down, the other one will go up. So either they're positively related, or they're both going up, negatively related, if one's going up, the other's going down, or not related at all. So those are the kind of questions that I'm going to be able to answer. And the way that this is done is through data analysis, and more specifically statistics. In this case, if you're doing qualitative data, if you're not doing numbers kind of stuff, you can do different kinds of data analysis too. So what I'll be doing is I'll be taking all the surveys that I've administered, and I'm going to be entering them into a database and running statistical analyses on them to see what kind of relationships are here. Is this going to be a positive relationship, a negative relationship, or no relationship? And then the same with this one here. So this will give me some idea of how all of these things are related. I'm not going to know if one causes the other, or if the other one causes the first one. I won't be able to figure that out, but I will be able to know how they kind of all hang. And so once I finish that procedure of analyzing the data, coming up with those sort of relationships, the final step is to do the write-up. And in this case, I'll be publishing. So when you do kind of the writing and the publishing, it goes back up here. So after you write it, it gets submitted to the literature, either in the form of a peer-reviewed journal or a book chapter or something like that. And that way, people in the future can stand on your shoulders, and they don't have to do the exact same thing that you did. They can ask a slightly different question. So it's this idea of me answering this question is going to help other people in the future when they're asking their own questions and they're doing their own literature searches. So that's kind of the research process in a very, very simplified, basic sort of way. And I was hoping that you guys would have some questions, either about doing research in general or about my particular work that I could answer for you guys. So I'd be happy to answer questions right now. Yeah.
So let's say that you were to find a positive correlation between connectedness to nature and mental health. What could you do to figure out why there's that correlation?
Yeah, good question. So what's kind of the next step after that? It'd be doing an experiment. It would be trying to increase connectedness to nature in some way, maybe through an intervention, like taking people out on a hike, and seeing that if that changes, that connectedness to nature level can change, if we can notice any changes in mental health. So it's going to be causing sort of manipulations. If we can make connectedness to nature go down, would that have any effects on mental health? So trying to see if there's any sort of causes and effects is only something that you can do by experimental manipulation. So this isn't necessarily considered an experiment because I'm not trying to shape or change any of your behavior. I'm just trying to get an idea for what's happening now. So the next step would be for me to actually manipulate connectedness to nature, and manipulate mental health, and see if that has an influence on the other one. Does that make sense? Yeah, good question. Anyone else?
How long will this process take, or kind of a personal question, how long have you been doing this research?
Yeah, good question. I actually started this line of research when I was an undergrad. I started this particular study the last fall, so it's been going for about 1.5 years now. And it took me about 1 year to get to this part, and then it took me about half a year to kind of get this part ready to go, to kind of all the materials together, start experimenting, collecting data. And I'm hoping to finish by the end of this semester. So overall, from start to finish, it's been about a 2-year process. So that's why I was saying before, you have to really like what you're studying, because you're going to be spending a lot of time doing it.
And what made you decide to do connectedness to nature, and relate it to quality of life and mental health?
Yeah, excellent question. In my own personal experiences in my life, I found nature to be very, very healing and very important for me. It was always a place that I could go to feel more relaxed and calm and secure. And so I was wondering, what sort of evidence there was out there. I'm in a clinical type of program right now, so kind of the emphasis is on mental health, quality of life, how are people doing, how can we make people as happy and healthy as we can. So I was kind of trying to combine those 3 areas. It's like, how do my experiences with nature and the natural world relate to my experiences with mental health and quality of life, and sort of how do all of those sort of fit together? How are people's views towards nature related to their views of their health, related to their views of their lives? So for me, it was a very personal experience, and I had a lot of significant times in nature, and I felt very much connected with nature myself. So I kind of wanted to see what was going on with that, and maybe if other people felt similar.